The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is no substitute for professional care by your doctor or your qualified healthcare professional. Never disregard or delay professional medical advice because of something you've heard on this podcast or in any linked material. Guests who speak on this podcast express their own opinions, experience, and conclusions. Dr. Shirley neither endorses nor opposes any particular opinion discussed on this podcast. The views expressed on this podcast have no relation to those of any academic, hospital, practice, institution, or other entity with which Dr. Shirley may be affiliated.
Welcome to Forever Fab, the podcast on fashion, the art of living, and all things beauty. This podcast is curated by Dr. Shirley Madhere, MD, as the definitive source of holistic wellness through beauty.
Welcome to Forever Fab, the podcast dedicated to fashion, the art of living well, and all things beauty. I'm your host, Dr. Shirley Madhere, your purveyor of this definitive source of living your most beautiful life. This week's episode is dedicated to knowing yourself. Our topic is innovations and transformations in beauty, how global trends shape the future of beauty, and my interview is with Ms. Kelly Kovack. So, I'm speaking with Kelly today, most recently the founder of Beauty Madhere, which is an online newsletter about the trends in beauty and the business of beauty, and it features a highly curated and original content by thought leaders, including Kelly herself, as well as other beauty insiders. Prior to this venture of Beauty Madhere, Kelly worked in fashion at Bergdorf Goodman, one of my favorites, and Chrome Hearts. Pivoting from fashion into beauty, however, she gained experience at Bliss, where I believe, if this is correct, she helped lead the acquisition of Bliss by none other than LVMH. Pivoting again to entrepreneurship, Kelly helped co-create Chemistry and Purpose Built, which were both consulting agencies that actually helped, startup brands and other brands to create their own products and take it to the next level.
Yeah, taking concepts, bringing it to market.
Voila. So she also then created her own brands, including Foundry New York City, which launched the fragrance Odin, one of my favorites. What was my favorite, number 1 or number 3? Or maybe both?
It was number 3.
Number 3, thank you. And also now, Beauty Madhere. Kelly has won numerous awards, such as the Pantone Color Award, Pent Award, Fifi, and a number of Allure Best of Beauty Awards. Welcome, Kelly. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. So, boy, you and I have known each other for years, and I didn't know that you've done so much. I mean, it's been such an epic journey so far.
It makes me tired, actually, thinking about it.
I know, I was reading a lot, right? But knowing you, I know there's more to come, so let's dive right in. You first started in fashion. What did you learn about that industry that actually serves you today in beauty?
Well, I think that fashion was sort of a very short-lived career. And it started while I was supposed to be going to college.
Okay.
So I was actually managing Benetton stores.
Oh,
so
wow.
that also dates me. Managing Benetton stores when I should have been going to school.
That's okay.
So that's sort of when I started my career in fashion. Got a degree in political science and philosophy, which I've clearly never used. Moved to New York and ended up at Bergdorf Goodman as sort of a stepping stone. I thought that I wanted to be a buyer. So I started on the sales floor because, you know, they always tell you foot in the door.
Yes.
But I was sold a little too much. So
you oversold?
I was making way more than a buyer, an assistant buyer did. So that transition was never going to happen. And also ended up realizing that, I think my career has been a series of, at least early on, figuring out what I didn't want to do. Much more so than what I did want to do. I think
which is equally important.
Yeah, I think people sort of discredit how important that is. And ended up on the sort of supply side, if you will, of the fashion industry, sort of selling leather. And that's how I worked with Chrome Hearts.
Yes.
And the fashion industry, sort of back then, it's not as glamorous as people think, and especially on the supply side, and sort of working for leather suppliers was like a very male environment.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, I learned. Yeah, exactly. But I learned a lot because I learned how to have to compete and be taken seriously, and at a very, I guess, young age, realized how, not to let emotions get involved in business decisions, and unfortunately, you have to show up as a female sometimes and be more prepared than everyone.
Absolutely.
So that was sort of the learning ground for that.
Yes. Very valuable.
Yeah, it went sort of, it went a little wrong, the environment. And I was really young and ended up at Bliss by just one of those random decisions you make in your life. A friend was going to run Bliss that didn't exist yet.
Okay.
It was still Let's Face It.
Okay. It was called Let's Face It?
It was called Let's Face It. Was Marcia's first sort of facial studio.
And this is Marcia Kilgore, right?
Marcia Kilgore. And she had this idea for Bliss.
Yes.
I was just going to answer the phones for the summer. That was the plan.
Yes.
She got my resume and wanted to know what I did. I was running supply and production. And she said, "Oh, your friend can run the catalog I want to do."
Oh.
So back then, beauty products were not sold through catalogs.
No, they weren't.
I was just like, I don't know how to do that. She said, I don't know how to do that either. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
If the summer comes and it doesn't work out, you're not happy, go back and work for fashion.
Amazing.
And so that was sort of it. And it was that light bulb moment of, I'm good at this,
Yes.
and I can be creative and run a business. And it all sort of came together. And that's sort of how I fell into the beauty industry.
Wow.
I built the Bliss catalog.
Yes. Congrats.
And then it was...
That was major. I remember receiving it and then pouring through it like, yeah, I'd like that. It was just so whimsical but light, serious beauty, but still not so serious.
Yeah, I mean, that was all Marcia's voice. I mean, she had a very, very clear vision. And, there were a handful of us that, we were all sort of the same age.
Yes.
So we just kind of got it.
Yeah.
And we didn't know any better. So we made lots of mistakes, but we also didn't have any preconceived ideas of what was or was not possible.
You were sort of first to market with that.
Yeah, I mean, I got told by lots of people, you can't sell skincare through the mail. You can't sell makeup through the mail. You couldn't sell anything through the mail.
At the time, right?
And I didn't understand why. I came from fashion.
Yeah.
And then slowly, we kind of figured it out. I mean, the stories are funny. But we created a whole new distribution channel. But we didn't even realize, I don't think we realized what we were,
happening.
The big change we were making, because we were just in the zone.
Yes.
And, Bliss sort of right time, right place, right group of people.
Wow.
And it was sort of, I think, part of the first sort of indie beauty trend, although indie beauty brands have always been around, I think.
Yes. Well, they have to start from someplace, right?
Right, Estee Lauder.
Estee Lauder started from someplace.
Right, people tend to forget that.
Yes.
But it was the time when Bobbi Brown was just starting, NARS was just starting, Creme de la Mer was one product.
Wow.
Stila, so there were all these brands that now are sort of legacy brands, if you will.
Legacy is
that
right.
got their starts then. So that's a long-winded answer to
That's
your
a great
question.
answer. I love the story. My next question, you answered it. I was going to ask you, how did you transition into beauty? Voila.
I fell into it.
You fell into it. But you know what? In hearing that story, it really wasn't random. No. Because I know you, and we've talked about beauty and the business of beauty, and you really have a deep insight into beauty and how it works and how it doesn't work sometimes. So I really value that beautiful brain of yours, and I'll get you to share some more about that later. So what's the most exciting aspect of the beauty industry now, in your opinion?
The beauty industry, I would say, in the past 5 years has changed so much.
Very recently.
So much. And it's not just, a lot of people attribute it to social media. And yes, that allows you to sort of scale a brand probably yes, faster than you ever could.
Yes, if you get the traction.
If you get the traction.
Absolutely.
And you used to be able to do that 5 years ago. Now you have to spend your way to doing
Absolutely.
it. So even
I know
sort
all
of
about it.
Right. So but I think it's the for me it is sort of in talking about trends and business models, there's almost this, I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, but there's polar opposites happening.
Yeah.
So on one hand, you have these business models that are kind of based on chasing trends and hoping they hit them right. Kind of hoping they hit more than they miss.
Yes.
And sort of this speed to market, like this fast beauty.
Yeah, fast
approach.
beauty.
Fast
Exactly.
beauty.
Yep, that's what I call it, fast beauty.
And fast beauty is, I would say 9 times out of 10, maybe more than that, not clean beauty. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have this sort of clean beauty movement, which is still happening fast, but it has different requirements.
Yes.
And, so you have those trends and then everything in the middle. And then even aesthetically, I'm sure you see it, you have that selfie moment people have, highly contoured, the lashes, everything,
the volume,
for that,
the contours,
everything,
the lines, the angles, the shadows,
the extensions,
everything.
And then on the other side, you have sort of this movement to wearing no makeup and being natural. So there's sort of these polar opposites, and I think most people they live in the middle.
Yeah.
They live in the middle, or they live on the extremes as well, depending on what's going on in their life. So I think it's a really interesting time from that perspective.
Yeah.
And I think there are these really big shifts happening in the way we do business, sort of culturally, in society. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll take the politics out of the equation. Let's take the politics
out of the equation.
It affects businesses.
It does.
But you have this really interesting thing happening with gender. And
gender fluidity.
Gender fluidity, and how people identify with gender or don't. Mm-hmm. And it's not about like guys wearing makeup.
Right. It's deeper than that.
It's deeper than that. And I think it's going to have, like, right now it's sort of a trend.
Yes.
But you see sort of, there are brands like Kiehl's has always been unisex.
That's true.
So it's sort of an extension of that. Yeah. But I think it's even going to affect how we market differently.
I agree.
Because I was doing a consumer survey.
Yes.
And thinking about how you identify. So you can't say just, male, female anymore.
Right. Or even other.
So you really have to, I think it is going to sort of even kind of change how we market.
I do
because
too.
You want to be inclusive.
You want to be all inclusive.
Yeah. And I think the other big thing is, especially in beauty, because beauty is also a really dirty business.
Yeah.
In the way we manufacture, the amount of plastic we put into the universe.
Yeah, it's true.
And I think that the big guys are really making an effort. Most have like a 2025 goal or 2020 goal.
Like the Millennial Development Goals, try to improve the environment. Exactly. They try to be consistent with that. There is some effort.
Exactly. But there are small brands that are really making profound changes. And I think that brands are going to, either you're going to be sustainable.
Or you're not.
Or you're not going to be in business. Yeah. Because consumers want it, and governments are starting to regulate into it. So consumers and government are kind of in lockstep on this thing.
Absolutely. And when you have those two together, they tend to spearhead major changes that brands should be ready for.
And, we only have one planet, so it's the right thing to do as well. True.
Although, according to some business people, we may actually be traveling to other planets.
But it's like, we're just going to go there and destroy that one too.
I don't know. But I love the way that you describe the two extremes of beauty. And I know for myself, I tend to veer towards the natural. Mm-hmm. But, for example, this podcast, I zhuzh it up. Right? Yeah. We're taking photos. We have video. I zhuzh up. But for the most part, I tend to live in the middle also. Yeah. There are moments when you zhuzh, and there are moments when you aren't, and you just want to be free and have absolutely nothing on, including clothing. But that's not a topic for conversation right now. So you touched upon this, and in terms of the environment and sustainability. But what are your thoughts on the natural beauty and the organic beauty movement? I get excited about it, but I also know that there really is no true definition. There aren't really established standards, perhaps as there are in Europe. So where do you think that's going?
I think, well, in the United States,
Yes.
there aren't updated regulations on anything. Let alone sort of natural and organic.
Right.
So that's sort of a whole other topic. But I think it's a tricky question, because I think a lot of the associations that brands make are based hopefully on what is the DNA or sort of the purpose of the brand. Some of them are opportunistic, and I mean, that's fine too. But it's confusing. Yeah. It's confusing to consumers, but I also think that, there's sort of confusion at all touch points. So, I think sometimes consumers are more educated, but you have retailers in the mix who want a piece of that business. So they all have their own identification, their own sort of criteria of what's clean
or natural, right?
And it changes.
Yes.
So as a brand, it's like, okay, well, if I want to have a retail plan, who am I going to develop into?
Right. And they tend to be different also, but the confusion is, are they all the same? And clean is actually different from natural, which is different from organic.
Yes. So, and it also is sort of tied to the supply chain. So a lot of brands don't have visibility really to where their ingredients are coming from, so they're not really controlling their supply chain. Right. Some of them are.
Yeah, and consumers are demanding that more and more.
Right.
Yeah,
but
transparency.
If, organic ingredients are sometimes not as stable. Like if you go to the farmer's market and you buy produce, it doesn't last as long.
True. That's right.
So,
no preservatives.
No
preservatives. It won't last.
So, it's a tricky question because, people build beauty brands to make money. So it also needs to be kind of a sustainable business. So organic, organic ingredients are sort of regulated to be able to use the designation.
Yes.
Natural, I mean, not everything that's natural is good for you.
Right.
Like, you don't want to rub poison ivy all over yourself. Like, just because it's natural also doesn't mean it can also be natural and toxic.
That's true. And speaking of natural and toxic, I actually have a very quick story. I performed a facelift on a patient, and when I had done the facelift, I had extended the incision into her hairline to hide it. She thought, right after surgery, that a natural disinfectant would be to rub tea tree oil all over the incision in her hairline. So upon follow, which I was not aware of, and upon follow-up, I asked why the hairline scar was looking not healthy, and she admitted to me that she had rubbed tea tree oil on it, thinking that it was going to help prevent infection. So, to your point, sometimes natural ingredients are toxic.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of bad information out there.
There's a lot of information.
And
and without someone credible to help you suss through it.
Right. I think the sort of the clean connotation has probably the broadest.
Yeah.
I mean, there is zero regulation around that, or non-toxic for that matter.
Right.
And, clean kind of lives in this world of brands that want to have sort of organics and naturals, but they also want to be able to use synthetics, which are not necessarily bad.
Right.
Sometimes they make a product more efficacious.
Very true.
So it really depends on, I think, from a brand owner or even as a consumer.
Yes.
It is, have a belief in something and develop into it. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. And I think brands are sort of, especially indie brands, you kind of have to pick your niche and speak to that consumer.
Yeah.
Speaking to everyone or trying to be everything to everyone has never worked, and it really doesn't work now for exactly that reason.
Now, speaking of different ingredients and having sort of a brand philosophy to stick by, what do you think of probiotic skincare and also plant stem cells? I have my own opinions.
I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting about kind of what's happening in beauty today, aside from sort of the business things we talked about,
Yes.
is this true merging of health, beauty, and wellness.
100%.
And so, being in the spa world 20 some years ago,
Yeah.
we talked about beauty from the inside out, but
Yeah.
it was kind of like this crunchy granola, whatever. And now it's become very mainstream.
And in my practice, it's always been that way.
Exactly.
Beauty from the inside out.
And I think the fact that we're living healthier lifestyles, I think that's the exciting thing, is that people really are approaching sort of beauty as kind of a holistic endeavor.
Thank goodness.
And, I love the fact that there is a place on Sephora shelves for
Yes.
supplements now.
Yes.
It's not that people hadn't tried to do that before.
Of course. But
They
the
couldn't
timing
get-
was
the
not quite
timing was
right.
not right.
Yeah.
And so the timing is right for so many of those sort of what was considered alternative practices.
Yes.
Meditation,
Yes.
acupuncture.
They're all a part of the continuing spectrum of
Exactly.
beauty, which
Exactly.
is wellness.
Exactly.
I love that. And thank goodness the holistic approach to beauty is coming back in favor, because then I'm relevant again.
Well, people still want that quick fix.
That's true.
I mean, I think for consumers, it's finding what that balance is for
Agreed.
you, like what's right for you.
Agreed. So you mentioned Sephora. Is there too much beauty out there? Are the shelves of Sephora and Ulta Beauty simply beyond overwhelming? I know when I walk through the aisles, because I have some knowledge of ingredients and preservatives and actives and what they're supposed to do, I can sort of figure things out. But your average consumer, for example, who is inundated with, if it's not social media, then, I don't know, television commercials, whatever the case may be, is it too much?
I have, in my entire career,
Yes.
I have never seen so many beauty brands before in my life.
a lot.
And you can look on the shelves of Sephora, but there are entire trade shows dedicated to indie beauty brands, and I walk through them and I'm like, where on earth are all these products going to go? And fragrance, the same thing. There are trade shows just for indie fragrance, and I'm like, who's buying all this product?
People like me try everything.
Yeah, and I think it's great because it's sort of, beauty is really built on kind of entrepreneurs. But, I also think we've been in a period of really, really healthy, sort of a really healthy M&A environment.
Yes.
Where, people mortgage their homes thinking they're going to have $1 billion valuation and get bought by Estee Lauder.
Right.
And that is the exception. So, I think there's, I have lots of entrepreneurs that come to me.
Yes.
And I'm like, make sure you do a business plan, make sure you have a financial model, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into, because there's a lot, and it's really incredibly competitive. But I think what's interesting, I started my career in retail, and I love those kind of like independent stores, any kind of store.
Yeah.
I still like getting handwritten notes. Like,
Yeah.
I miss those days of just like good old fashioned customer service. Right. It goes a long way.
Yes.
But I think we're sort of seeing with the launches of like Detox Market, Folane,
right up the street.
Credo, you're seeing sort of smaller size, smaller format stores that have a real opinion around a product assortment. Yeah. So they're sort of doing the curation.
That's true.
And I think maybe that is where we're going to see some growth. Even why is it? It has totally escaped me. It will come back to me. Okay. But even Kith,
yes,
the sneaker store,
yes,
they're doing beauty drops now.
No.
Yes, I'm obsessed.
Okay. You like them?
They do these monthly beauty drops the same way they do for limited edition
For
streetwear.
their own product, for their own, just other people's.
Yeah, they did a wellness drop. It's so smart.
We might have to get in touch with Kith.
You should, because I'm like, so I kind of think the interesting thing is,
sort of cross-referencing, contamination, if you will.
Because what's happened is
cross-pollination.
Beauty has really nice margins.
Yes.
It doesn't have the same sort of discount cycle that fashion has.
Yes.
So a lot of apparel retailers are getting into the beauty category because it's incremental sales.
Yes.
It can add freshness.
Right.
And
it's for the common good.
It's for the
to
common
make the world
good.
a more beautiful place.
And I think that what we've realized is consumers don't care where they buy beauty. So, where once there used to be this if you are a luxury brand, you were sold at Neiman Marcus, Bergdorf Goodman.
Yes.
You knew where your channel of distribution was.
Right.
Now brands almost have this like channel agnostic approach to distribution, and it's around there are wellness stores that are selling beauty.
I know
there are,
yoga studios selling CBD.
Yeah. Lululemon is doing a personal care line.
Wow.
So everyone kind of wants a piece of those beauty margins.
Right. But not everyone is credible and authentic.
And that is very true. Mm-hmm. That is very true.
So you mentioned M&As. You actually have an entire sort of tutorial on your site about funding and how to capture support for startup brands and even actually some established brands. What would you say the climate now is like for finance and beauty and tech? Are the angels and the VCs intentionally looking to invest in beauty brands, especially beauty brands that have a tech component?
It is.
The appetite is voracious, I presume.
The appetite is there because of sort of these big sales that have happened. So, I think, I'm trying to think of, I don't know how many, but there's probably about 5 brands that have these sort of unicorn billion-dollar statuses.
Yeah.
And that was, having $1 billion valuation was just not something that happened 5 years ago.
Until Shark Tank.
So I think that, beauty in sort of this economic environment, it's healthy. The margins are healthy. The multiples are really healthy. So what I've seen is that a lot of people who have never invested in the beauty space want a piece of it.
Yes.
So it's made it more competitive.
Absolutely.
Strategics are paying higher multiples, which is sort of making it prohibitively expensive for some of the VCs and PEs. So it's from a sort of a finance end of the industry. It's highly competitive right now.
Yeah.
I think what we're starting to see are incubators pop up.
Yes.
Which it's very common in tech. Beauty doesn't have that many people who can sort of invest in that sort of, call it startup to $3 million.
Yes.
And so many really, really good brands sort of like die on the vine because they couldn't get the funding they needed. Because, I'm not a finance person. I'm a marketing and brand strategy person. I kind of call it Kelly math. But I'm like,
I like Kelly math.
There's, people chase growth, and having had some of my own startups and self-funding them, growth is fantastic, but growth also requires a tremendous amount of money.
Absolutely. So recurring investment.
Yeah. So when even though you might have a really successful indie brand and you have people who want it, you still have to run the productions. So your productions get bigger and bigger.
That's right.
And you're trying to sort of float the cash, but then something comes in late. So then people are chasing you for money, but you don't have product, and it becomes this vicious cycle.
Yes.
So a lot of people, unless you've kind of been through that, don't really anticipate like how it's like a runaway freight train, and you want to keep feeding it.
Of course.
But then, So I think that's the trickiest thing is sort of getting that early funding. But there's, the incubators there are a lot of smart people putting these incubators together. So, hopefully that's where brands will get sort of the funding they need. Other than that, if you're starting up, it's friends and family. Like people want to have proof of concept.
Yeah.
And angels, but even angels want to know. It's like it's not charity.
No, it isn't.
It's an investment. So they want to know that what they're investing in as well. So there's a lot of people looking for money.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people looking to invest, but sometimes
there's an expectation of a return.
There is, and there aren't enough brands that are of scale.
Yeah.
There's sort of a shortage because they've all been acquired because it's been sort of so active.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So in the same manner, is tech helping to shape the future of beauty? And is that, if there's a tech component in a beauty brand, does that make it more attractive for acquisition or just in general to the consumer base?
I think it depends.
Oh.
I think technology needs to make sense.
Yes.
And I think technology, it needs to be intentional and it needs to serve a purpose.
Right.
So you can't just throw tech onto a jar of cream and say, oh, I'm worth more money.
Right. Or what about AI? I mean,
I think it's a matter of, I kind of think of tech as there are definitely tech solutions that are sort of more enterprise kind of focused, where they can be applied to sort of any brand.
Yes.
But I think when you talk about a beauty tech, so it's sort of like the product and the technology.
Yeah.
I think the technology needs to support the product and the positioning.
It needs to make sense.
So the product and the brand needs to be there, and then I think the technology needs to add the value.
Be complementary and add value.
So I think it's really interesting and frightening what technology can do.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of apps that are tied to either replenishment or
subscription basis,
or sort of personalizing your skin. They're capturing so much data.
I know. That is what is exciting but scary.
Yeah, and it's the data that is the valuable
knowledge is
part.
power. The more you know someone.
Because you can be smarter in your development. But that being said, it's like, okay, yes, you get all this data, but you have to do something with it. So you actually have to have a strategy for how you're going to action the data.
And a team to be able to help you sort through that data.
And, I think the strangest thing is, beauty brands now have like data scientists on their team. Like,
I know. Nobel Prize winners.
It is sort of how
PhDs.
Yeah, how beauty teams are structured. They include people who, probably never in a million years thought that they would end up in the beauty industry.
Fascinating.
But it is this sort of technology component and sort of digital marketing.
Yes.
Requires data scientists if you want to
crunch the data, crunch
and
the
be
numbers.
that $1 billion brand.
Yeah, as you said, it requires an upfront investment and ongoing investment. Yeah. So speaking of different technologies in the beauty industry, let's talk about social media just a bit. Do you think that social media has leveled the playing field and created more opportunities? Or has it actually muddied the landscape a little bit? Because again, we mentioned, at least on the shelves of Sephora and Ulta Beauty, there's just so much. So does it help? Does it hinder?
I think there was this moment where it leveled the playing field. And that's where you had these brands scale so fast.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had tapped into something that sort of the strategics were left flat-footed.
Yeah.
So they had this competitive advantage.
True.
That doesn't exist anymore.
No.
And that sort of organically growing a community on social media, that's really hard to do now as well.
Except we're trying to do it right now. Very, very challenging.
Yeah. And, and also when you're like, oh, okay, I think I've got this figured out. Like, I'm getting really amazing engagement on Instagram. And then you're like, oh.
It's short-lived.
20 people liked it because they shifted the algorithm. And you're like, well, I don't even know why it was working before, but it's not now. So it's, I think we've moved beyond leveling the playing field. And I think now, in many respects, it's being manipulated. So I think that it's a great way to build community.
Yes.
But it costs money to build that community. And I also think that, there's sort of a dark underbelly to all of it. Like, I would not want to be a teenage girl growing up today.
Oh my gosh. How?
Like the pressure. I just, I don't know.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. I mean,
makeup, skin, hair, beauty, clothing, bags, shoes, friends, likes.
And people can be mean, and it's all very public. And so I think there's, I think I think there is going to be this, like, people are already doing digital detoxes.
Yes.
And I think, we're seeing more and more sort of events happening sort of offline and people wanting connection. So, I mean, social media it's here to stay. It's
Absolutely.
not going anywhere. It's part of the equation.
Yeah. It's part of the new normal.
It is part of the new normal. And I think you have to choose, like, what is your platform?
Right.
It doesn't necessarily have to be all of them.
Right.
So I think, it's here. It's how you want to use it. But it's,
I agree.
And, I think how you want to use it and how you want to show up. Right. Like, I think one of the things that I guess maybe I'm just really naive, but there has been this trend of brands being sort of found out about writing bad reviews on competitors.
Oh my gosh.
Of brands writing fake reviews on their own. Like, there's this manipulation happening.
The art of war can be truly distasteful.
Yeah, I mean, it just would never occur to me.
And me neither.
But it's happening.
Yeah.
And so, it's sort of like, I don't know, what is your ethical compass?
Do you have one?
Do you have one? So, I think that's important for brands too. And it usually starts from the top and goes down, right?
So I hear.
Yeah.
So what innovations were the most exciting for you in the past year or two? I know beauty has changed quite a lot in the past 5 years. And then what upcoming innovations in beauty are you most excited about? So we're excited about in the past few years and are excited about in the future.
What was I excited? I think what I was excited, well, I'm still excited about it, but I think is the role of content. So there was, and this kind of, I think it kind of dovetails with social media, but also maybe predates it. Where
content was always there, in my opinion. It's just now being distributed in different ways with other tools.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think about it from how I develop brands. So, having sort of a history of knowing what things were.
Yes.
You used to develop these brand stories and founder bios and taglines, and you pushed it out there, and you wanted everyone to be consistent.
Right.
And at some point, I took those, but started almost treating brands like content platforms. So creating pillars of what a brand stands for. And taking the brand values, but making them actionable.
Got it.
And also taking brand stories and breaking them down into
snippets of bite-sized 140 characters or less.
Well, sometimes more than that.
Sometimes more than that.
But that they could stand alone, or you could kind of put them together. So almost creating a brand in kind of this toolbox approach.
Like a collage approach.
Yeah, because people kind of were picking and choosing.
That's right. Yeah.
And then I think it was also a matter of, needing to create value for your customer. So, and value is not always about discounting. It's sort of like, how can you show up and add value to your consumer's life?
Yeah, and show up authentically so that it feels real.
So, is it through customization and personalization, or is it through sort of conferences and events where you're providing education? Is it a blog that's lifestyle that makes sense? But like, what are those things that you can bring into your consumer's life that add value, but also sort of add context to your brand? And I think that was sort of a fundamental shift that I think it's still happening. I think a lot of brands struggle with content strategies.
Yes.
But I think the brands that think like publishers, and, you know, it's very interesting that a lot of brands are going back to direct mail.
Interesting.
Yep. Direct mail is a new trend.
Wow. What's old is new.
Yeah, because acquiring consumers online is so expensive.
And so, yeah.
So Away is doing this amazing, it's more of a magazine than a catalog.
Yeah.
But brands are doing catalogs again.
Wow.
And brands are doing sort of branded magazines that live online and offline. So I think, you know, I think that was sort of something that was really interesting and still interests me, and sort of what sort of led me to launch Beauty Matter. But I think what interests me now...
Well, if I just may say with regard to Beauty
Yes.
Matter, I have always thought that you are a brilliant writer. So I subscribe to beautymatter.com and I read it every single issue that I receive. It is not only, I mean, it is highly curated, but you just seem to be able to know what people who do have a passion as well as a healthy respect for the beauty industry, you seem to know what we want to read. And your content it's fantastic for those people who are in this space, and I applaud you for it. So you do think like a publisher, but you go beyond thinking like a publisher because you are in it and you disseminate information in a way that is beyond easily digestible, but also entertaining and educating.
Thank you. I mean, I think there are a lot of people who create good content, and I think we do a lot of curation and aggregation because I think that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Right. And there are a lot of smart people out there. So why not share content and share it with different audiences? So we have a lot of relationships like that. And, you know, from the original content, you know, I sort of approach it from a brand owner and a strategist. Yes. So if I think something is relevant to me, then I think it'll be relevant to someone else. Yes. So, I mean, I'm not a journalist. So, and I think that's probably the difference. My lens is maybe a little bit broader, or maybe I can make connections because I've sort of been in that situation. Yes.
So back to what you're excited about.
What I'm excited about now.
Upcoming future prospects.
You know, I am really excited about what's happening with sustainability, but in a very, it kind of is, it's very much based on technology because it's going to require a lot of innovation.
Absolutely.
I think we've gotten there from a formulation standpoint. Yes. And I think the formulation, like the clean formulas, even the waterless formulas have come a long way. But I think packaging has been lagging.
Supply side, potentially.
And the supply side. Yeah. But I think there's so much cool innovation happening in packaging now. Yeah. And it's really, you know, it's really been driven by small brands. Yeah. So
recyclable materials actually can be sexy and beautiful.
Not only recyclable, compostable. But it gets, you know, but it also gets really technical.
Yes, it does.
And the people who are into zero waste beauty or like they're really into it. And you're like, whoa, I'm not sure how I got all the way down this path. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Down the rabbit hole, right.
Because even there aren't any in Europe, there are standards for composting. Yes. In the US, there are not. And then it's like, is it industrial compostable or is it garden compostable? Right. So it all gets very technical. But there are small brands like Lolly Beauty, who's the first zero waste beauty brand.
Kudos to Lolly.
Kudos to Lolly because Tina Hedges, who's the founder, she also happens to be a friend. And a really like brilliant human being. But, you know, she really approached it and she came from sort of the traditional beauty background.
Great, we'll have Tina on the podcast.
Yeah, but had this moment of, I have put a lot of toxic stuff into the world, and I want to make
onto my skin and into my body.
And I want to make a difference. And she also comes from a Cuban Jamaican background,
Yes.
so there is kind of that.
Yes. Go back to the earth.
Back to the earth.
Absolutely.
But she has completely changed how products are being made and packaged. So she's using food grade ingredients,
Amazing.
waterless products, tracing all of her ingredients. There's
Highly transparent.
highly transparent, addressing human trafficking in beauty.
I know,
which is not even a topic.
I know.
But it should be.
It should be.
And the packaging is, either recyclable, reusable,
Yes.
or compostable. And
Amazing.
she's had to push vendors
I'm sure
who
she's had to
say
fight for
you
it.
can't do it.
Yep.
And but now it's happening the other way around.
That's right, yeah.
So there are packaging suppliers that are doing R&D, and they need brands that will take the chance and try and commercialize something.
Yeah.
So that's what excites me now, because
Yeah.
I think it's also making an impact and doing good in the process.
Absolutely.
Which is
She
important.
and Lolly Beauty are definitely helping to make the world
And there are a lot of
beautiful
other brands
place.
as well.
Oh, yeah.
That's just one that I know
Yeah.
sort of intimately, but it's
Yeah.
like those kind of brands that are really putting the work in.
Yeah. And our mavericks.
Absolutely.
But who also those brands have a big heart, and they're seeing it beyond themselves and just another beauty
It's
product.
like,
They're
it's a mission.
It's a mission. Beauty. Oh my gosh, it's
a mission.
It's purpose-driven beauty, and it's using beauty as a platform. I love that topic, and we will get more into the topic of beauty and innovation and transformation with Kelly Kovack in part 2. Thank you for listening. Until then, stay beautiful inside and out.
You've just listened to part 1 of Forever Fab podcast. Please stay tuned for part 2 coming up next.